This podcast counts as socializing.
Woo! Woo! Welcome back.
Hi
Hello.
everyone. Welcome
Howdy.
back to this podcast counts as socializing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to be here. How are you guys?
I'm good. It's good to be back
Yeah.
for another
to see y'all.
episode.
Been so long.
Mhm.
It's episode 14.
I wasn't sure what episode number we were on.
I'm pretty sure it's 14, could be wrong. And exciting update, we hit 11 subscribers. Double
Yo,
digits.
Blew 10 out of the water.
We blew past our goal of 10. We ran straight through it.
Yo, if we can get to 12 after this episode, that'd be awesome. 12 is my favorite number.
It
Same.
is?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well.
It's divisible by a whole bunch of stuff. 2,
It only takes
4,
it only takes
3, 6.
one person to make your dreams come true, so
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got a good shot.
True.
Any like news for any of you guys to share? That was mine.
Not really.
Any life updates? Damn.
Same old. Mm-hmm. I do
Yeah, I
have a
guess.
question, though, for both
Oh,
of you.
you do? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hit me with it. I'll let you take the lead.
What is the coolest historical place that you have ever visited?
Insert title.
Mm-hmm.
Insert title.
here.
Oh, historical place? Okay, Nick, literally I'm trying to think of an historical place. Got it.
Mm.
And unfortunately, I think Abby, ours might be the same.
It's like, well, I mean, we did experience a lot of them together.
Yes. But there's only one place that I can think of that's like an historical place.
Okay, yeah.
Do you want
Should
to
I
go
go
first?
with a
or me?
different one?
Well, let's see if they're the same first. Well, now I'm like not sure it's the same. Okay, let's try it and see. Count us down, Nick.
3, 2, 1.
Stonehenge.
Okay.
I like that you said it after me still.
That's probably
Wait,
because
I
of the
might be lagging
delay.
in audio, yeah.
Ping
Oh,
moment.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like the only place I can. I mean, I'm sure I've gone to other historical places, but that one like stands out as being like the location itself is the history,
Mhm.
not like a museum full of historic things.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know if I call it the coolest. Like, it was cool.
Yeah, it's cool in concept. Like, it's cool to say that I've went to Stonehenge and saw Stonehenge. It's very underwhelming.
Mm.
It's cool big rocks, but like, you walk around it for a very long time.
Yeah, and you have
Yeah.
to take like this long bus to get out there. Like, it's not in the city proper, so you take a long bus, and then which is fine. It's nice to get out of the city. But if I was only in the city for a couple days, I would not want to take a long bus ride.
Right.
But we were there
Yeah,
for
that's
like
fair.
a couple months, so it was like, sure, we'll
Mhm.
get on this bus. Also, it was paid for. It was like they're like, you are going here, and we're like, okay.
Fair enough. Yeah,
So,
can't
yeah,
complain
we,
about
like-
a free trip to Stonehenge.
Yeah, it's like, fuck yeah, I'm going. So yeah, you get on the bus, you take this long bus ride, and then you get there, and it's kind of like this big open green field, and there's a couple of rocks, and there's nothing else there, so the rocks don't really feel that big either.
Mhm.
And you can't get that close to it. Like, you're not allowed to go
that's
in the
thing,
circle.
Right? You can't get very close to it, which is kind of crazy.
My favorite part,
Sheep for most of it.
I was gonna say, my favorite part were the sheep, because right next to it was like, it's just a big field, but there was like goats and sheep, so it was
Interesting.
so fun. But
Yeah, I mean, Stonehenge is a super interesting site, archaeology-wise, but I could see it being a little underwhelming, just from
Yeah,
a tourism
glad I did it.
perspective. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't pay to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can you think of any other like historical places you've been, Abby?
The places we went to in London were historical in some way.
Yeah, but I can't think of like a specific location. Like there was like the Tower Bridge and like
Mhm.
Mhm.
what's
Or
the
the-
like what's the like castle that's there? I forget the name. Is it just London Tower?
Oh,
The Tower of
yeah.
London?
No, wait, London. Well, London Tower.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
like the structure, right?
Yeah, the Tower of London has like the crown jewels and everything. And
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, then that's what I'm thinking. That was cool because it is like, oh, I'm in an actual castle. And the
Mhm.
thing that I did also find cool was, I mean, in like a very morbid way, is they have the area where, is it Anne Boleyn that was decapitated?
so, yeah.
Beheaded there?
Yep.
They have like her memorial like in the spot where she was beheaded. And so it is weird to be like, this is the spot where it happened.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
for most of it, I had like this weird feeling of like, I know that this is a real castle, but it felt so fake. Like, it felt so, like, out of my reality that I was like, I feel like I'm just walking through, like, a Disneyland attraction.
Interesting.
Right, it was just
Whereas,
like a like very in-person museum.
Yeah, like,
Yeah,
it couldn't hit me that it was, like, this is the actual castle.
Yeah,
it's
like
very
even
much
like
like
the
a
crown jewels saying them is
Uh-huh.
like, okay, you know.
Yeah.
Because you're also on like a conveyor belt.
That's
You are on a conveyor belt. I know.
It's really,
I did that
it's
recently.
it's a really smart idea. Like, to be like, you all get to look at it, and if you want to keep, it's in a circle. So if you want to keep looking at the same thing, you just get on the other side.
Mhm.
But it keeps
Mhm.
everyone moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
Because when you're at like art museums, this always happens where it's like the most popular painting in that area. Like, if you see like at the Met, I think they have like Starry Night or something. And so, or maybe at the MoMA. So everyone's always just standing right in front of there. And so, like, you can't actually see it, and you also can't get through the rest of the room.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's why I was saying to a friend, it'd be so cool if they put a lazy river through a museum. So you just like sit in the float and like get meandered through.
Just like an archivist, like, worst nightmare. Just like
I know.
wet
Chlorine,
and warm.
water, warm. Yeah, no. It
I
would
mean,
never
there's
work.
probably a way that you could do it, but you'd have to like have some kind of like divide, and then I feel like it ruins the novelty that you're not really so close to the stuff. Like, you're kind of
I
like
would
looking
agree.
at it through a window.
Yeah.
This is why the conveyor belt system is the most effective.
Mhm.
I could see Lazy River working for like an aquarium. Yeah. Like
Mhm.
at like a water park.
Yeah.
No one wants to be the fish in the water park aquarium.
What if you made it the inverse of revolving sushi? Where you're the one who's on the conveyor belt eating food,
Oh,
and then you
interesting.
get to see it's like a movie, like Flicks or something like that. Like it's like a movie and dinner.
I feel as though I might get nauseous.
Maybe, yeah.
Like the art comes
Maybe
past
there's, like,
you,
little breaks
or
in
like
between.
you're.
I do like that. Like, if I was sitting and all the art just moved,
That would be kind of neat.
that would be good for me, because the museum, I love museums, but they're so big and you stand for so long, and my knees already hurt most of the time. So like doing a whole museum's a lot for me. Like, I know I'm going to be in a lot of pain. So it's nice when I don't feel obligated to see everything at a museum. I've noticed I have a lot more fun if I'm just like, I'm going to see a couple things and enjoy myself and then leave before I want to die. Like, I'm not going to retain everything anyway. Therefore, I don't need to see everything. I'm just going to enjoy a few things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with that.
Wait, Nick, what was yours?
Yeah.
Well, mine, I think, is so when I was relatively young, I think I was maybe 13 or 14, my family went to Italy, and we went to Pompeii, and Pompeii was by far the coolest place. Definitely coolest historical place, maybe coolest just place I have ever been.
I would love to go to there.
Is what today's episode is going to be out. We're going to be talking about Pompeii.
Now they want to start like thinking the like intro to Pompeii.
I'll edit it in right here.
That's a weird song. What the fuck? I mean, like, yeah.
In what order did you learn about? Okay, I learned about Pompeii the accident before Pompeii the song.
Yeah.
But I learned about Bastille the band before I learned about Bastille the place.
I think same.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so
I know someone who's seen Bastille like 14 times in concert, by the way.
Okay, I do enjoy Bastille. I think their music's good. I would go see them if it were cheap or free. I would not go out of my way to see them 14 times.
Personally,
but I would probably enjoy it. It's probably a fun show.
There are bands that I probably would go out of my way to see 14 times. So,
yeah, exactly. I just am surprised that is theirs. But no hate.
Yep.
But as I was saying before, I think I would go out of my way to visit Pompeii.
Definitely worth it. If you go to Italy, if you're in the area, it's so worth it.
Plan a trip to Italy because I'm planning to go to Pompeii.
Very, very worth it.
Fair.
And I think we're going to talk about this more as we get into the episode too, but there's a couple other cities in the area that aren't as touristed as Pompeii that were also destroyed in the same eruption that are also phenomenal. So
you're just making like a trip plan for when I go.
Yeah, basically.
While you're in the area.
So before we get into the actual site of Pompeii, I want to do a quick little intro into volcanoes because I think they're really interesting, and I think it's worthwhile to understand volcanoes a little bit as they relate to Pompeii. So there are three.
Beautiful thought. We need to pause. I have lost my charger, and my computer's about to die.
Oh no!
Well, when's the last time you had it?
I think I left it at Josh's.
No! Does someone have a charger you can borrow?
Yes, I need to go do that, but I didn't
Okay,
want to
we'll pause.
Yeah, okay.
It was just getting good.
I know.
And I was like, I can't walk away from this.
It is fine. Yeah, no, we for sure need to pause so you can hear this. It's not a big deal.
You're gonna stop the pause the recording, or are you just gonna?
No,
We'll
unless you can pause it. I think you have to stop sharing your screen if I wanted to pause it.
Right?
No, that's all right.
Yeah,
we'll just cut it. We'll cut it. Editor, cut this bit.
I know. I'm like refraining from like telling you things because I want Abby to be back because there were like stuff. I mean, nothing important. It never is, but relevant, I believe. Oh my god! You know how like I have like a litter mat underneath my litter box.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they're like there's like a pocket.
Yep.
My Salem's inside of it.
Left mine at Junior's.
Junior. Who's Junior? No, genuine question. Who is Junior?
Yeah, I thought she left it at Josh's. Maybe it just came through weird.
I feel like...
Told you guys this story?
No. Do you call Josh Junior sometimes?
No.
So we did hear it correctly.
Yes, you know the story of how my dad became like Jeep happy?
Yes.
Yeah, he just made the joke and one day it stuck. So Josh, where my brother's name is Josh, my dad just called him Junior one day, and now my family has that stopped.
That is
that's really
funny.
I love that.
Your dad just decided he was gonna have a nickname and picked one. That's not how nicknames work. Usually things happen and you get a nickname, but he was like, I'm gonna wait for nothing to happen. I'm just picking one.
I'm just Jeep happy. But
that is so funny.
Well, because we were like talking about like, my mom was like, I think I want to be called Mimi or whatever, and she's going with like, the trend and all that. And my dad goes, I'm gonna call me Jeep happy. And then everyone just like died. And then
I remember
my dad Jeep happy.
He first decided, and your mom kept being like, "That's not happening." And I've never heard him be called anything else. If you're gonna veto a name, you have to come up with a second name.
Mm-hmm.
You got to start the trend of something else.
Yeah. Because otherwise, the insert title here is just gonna stick, and you're gonna be stuck with that forever.
True. It all comes full circle.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, hit us with those volcanoes, bitch.
Quick little geology lesson. There are three major types of volcano. You've got your shield volcanoes, your cinder cones, and then your composite or stratovolcanoes.
Cinder
cones, yeah. Cinder cones are fun.
This sounds like a monster truck show. Down at CinderCon!
Cinder cone, like cone. Because it's a cone shape. But I like the idea of CinderCon. For people that really like fire.
Okay, I understand now, but it's not as cool.
Yeah. So shield volcanoes are by far the biggest ones. Think the Hawaiian Islands. Those are all shield volcanoes. They tend to be really wide and flat, which is why they're named shield, right? They're kind of like a shield shape. And they're formed by low viscosity magma and non-explosive eruptions. So yeah, like Hawaii, most of Iceland, Olympus Mons, those are all shield volcanoes. Olympus Mons is the largest mountain and largest volcano in the solar system, by the way. Got a picture of it here. It's on Mars.
So are they only differentiated based on their shape, or are there other factors? So
the shape is the primary factor that is used to distinguish them, but the shape is a result of
the other
type of magma and eruption type, right? So
Okay.
they're
So-
correlated to the shape of it, right?
Their like phenotype is the defining factor, but they also have correlative genetics
Yes,
to create those phenotypes.
Exactly. And the correlated genetics are what kind of magma you've got down there, what kind of rock it's in.
Yo, what kind of
How
magma
hot.
you got down there?
And yeah, here's some pictures of Olympus Mons for scale, by the way. It is fucking giant. It dwarfs Everest and dwarfs literally everything on Earth. And Mars is a much smaller planet than Earth too, so like if you compare Olympus Mons like as a scaled to the size of Mars, it is giant. And part of the reason that volcanoes on Mars are so much bigger is because there are no plate tectonics. So plate tectonics is one of the main ways that energy and heat in Earth's core makes its way out to the surface and into space. Mars didn't have plate tectonics, so the only way it could force energy out of the center of the planet is through volcanism, and then just through like normal radiative heat.
Do you want to explain what a plate tectonic is?
Yeah, it's like.
Or are you getting there?
No, that's like continental plates moving around, sliding around on the mantle, and they smash into each other and pull apart and make mountains and ocean ridges and all kinds of other all earthquakes, all kinds of other geologic features can be explained by plate tectonics. So Mauna Loa here is one of the big shield volcanoes in Hawaii. Then you have Mount Rainier, which is your composite or stratovolcano. This is kind of what you think of when you think of volcano, I think. Built up of alternating layers of lava and tephra. And tephra is any like loose material that is ejected by an eruption. So that includes ash, that includes pumice, that's literally anything that gets shot out of the top of a volcano during an eruption. They're generally tall and conically shaped, and they are responsible for many of the largest eruptions that we usually see, like the big explosive ones. There's a volcanic explosivity index, which is like how volcanic eruptions are classified. It's the VEI scale. The highest numbers on that we see these days come from stratovolcanoes usually. Or they come from like supervolcanoes, which I'm not going to touch on because those are a whole different thing. But yeah, this is like what Mount St. Helens was. This is what Mount Vesuvius, which we will be discussing a lot in this episode, was as well. And then you have cinder cones, which are typically much smaller. They are like really classic looking but very small baby volcanoes, and they are characterized by very steep loose slopes, so it's like purely made out of tephra. It's like all ash and pumice and other ejected material, and it's basically just like a pile of gravel that has a little cone at the top, which is very fun.
Thought you were gonna say pile of crap.
No. And I want to real quick touch on, so like these pictures here kind of show some of the relative sizes of these volcanoes. So you got like Mauna Loa, which is the gigantic shield volcano in Hawaii, Mount Rainier, which is a big stratovolcano or composite volcano, and then the Capulan volcano, which is a little cinder cone. And what's cool is Mauna Kea in Hawaii, which is slightly taller than Mauna Loa, but like slightly less wide. Depending on how you measure it, be the tallest mountain on Earth. Because if you measure from base to tip, Mauna Kea is like 10,000 meters. It just happens that 6,000 of that is below sea level.
No, doesn't count.
Whereas Everest is only 8,800 meters, but that's measuring from sea level. So it's not like the highest elevation peak in the world, but it is one of the biggest mountains on Earth.
Yeah, cool. Nah, it doesn't count.
Yeah, it's funky because like...
Yeah, I get it, and like kudos to this mountain. She's killing it. That's a big bitch.
Yeah.
But you're not the tallest bitch.
Well,
And that's fine.
This stuff below Mount Everest, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When do we count the end of it? Like,
well, yes, right. It's just the continental crust. So if you're measuring from, but the thing is with continental crust is like the thickness changes, and
You
it's
can't
hard to
tell.
like, it's hard to pick a 0 point with mountains.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's why sea level has always been used. But then you look at Mauna Kea, and it has a very clear 0 point because the oceanic crust is very thin and like has a pretty flat, even surface on the deepest part. And if you measure from the base, which is like really clearly defined with Mauna Kea, it's a super tall mountain. It just happens that a lot of it doesn't.
I mean, go for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she does get a medal. It's just
Yep.
so does Everest. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. This picture here is the Capulan volcano in
I like this one.
New Mexico. Fun fact, this is a cinder cone. And you can see, I mean, it's not very big as far as volcanoes go. You know, as far as mountains go, there's some buildings in the foreground and you can drive up there. And it's just like so classically volcano looking. I love cinder cones. This here is a diagram of Mount Vesuvius. So Mount Vesuvius is a stratovolcano, but it's one where we have a bit of a caldera and a resurgent dome happening. So the area around what is now Vesuvius has seen volcanic activity for at least the last 400,000 years, and that has resulted in what is called the Somma caldera. So this whole area here is the Somma caldera, and you can see in that bottom right picture where that mountain would have been at one point before eruptions and erosion kind of wore down the main caldera part. And a caldera, by the way, is any kind of depression at the top of a volcano, right? So they can be pretty small, like with the cinder cones, or they can be huge, like Yellowstone is a gigantic caldera. That whole depression that makes up Yellowstone National Park and some of the surrounding area is one
I did not know that.
volcanic caldera. Yep.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was like in a bowl.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like super noticeable, right? But it is in fact.
Place that has little steam holes.
Yellowstone has those. Yeah. So Yellowstone is what's considered a supervolcano. Fun fact. So there's a big mantle hotspot, they believe, underneath that, and that's contributing to a lot of the geothermal activity that takes place in the area.
Cool.
Okay.
Yellowstone.
Mm-hmm. Very cool place. If you ever get the chance to visit, try to go in the off season.
You need to do a Yellowstone episode.
I should. Yeah, there's a lot of cool history and
and a lot of cool like true crime stuff.
Oh.
Intersection.
Mm-hmm.
I love an interdisciplinary lecture.
And ecology. I love some good ecology. Okay. So about 25,000 years ago, Mount Vesuvius proper began to form in the collapsed caldera of Mount Somma as a resurgent dome, primarily built by lava flows and the occasional explosive eruption. Real quick, I want to show another example of a caldera with some resurgent domes. This is in New Mexico, just north of Albuquerque. This is the Jemez Mountains, and it is a resurgent dome volcanic system here. So you can see like this main circle is where the caldera collapsed when the magma chamber drained, and then as it refilled and there were smaller eruptions, you have a bunch of smaller volcanoes that formed in some other areas around the perimeter of it. Is Kayla still here? Oh, yeah,
I'm listening. Damn.
Your camera got frozen. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just trying to process this.
Mm-hmm. And this is a super cool area of New Mexico. If anyone ever goes to New Mexico, you should go check this out.
I think I just need to like clarify some things. Okay, so volcano is different than mountain.
Yep.
Because it's made of lava?
Yeah. So volcanoes are formed by eruptions. Mountains include volcanoes, but
of anything or of specific things?
Yeah, of anything. I mean, there are technically mud volcanoes that are considered volcanoes as well, because
gross.
You know, sometimes with science, it's hard to like really classify things and hard to draw hard boundaries, and sometimes that means including mud volcanoes into your definition of a volcano,
like the way ice is lava.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, mountains include volcanoes, but are not limited to volcanoes. A lot of mountains are formed when two continental plates collide and get pushed to,
it's frogs and toads,
compression,
squares and rectangles. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So let's see. About 19,000.
That I had more clarifying questions. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Go back.
I'm not done. So then, are all volcanoes then quote active?
No. So active volcanoes are ones that are they have magma in their magma chambers, and they are
magma chamber.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty. Yeah.
Gun is loaded, ready to rip.
Yeah, my magma chamber is so full right now. You have no idea. I'm about to
erupt. Stole it from me, Nick. Okay. So magma's in the magma chamber.
Yeah, and they're,
fully loaded.
There's relatively frequent eruptions. There's always some kind of seismic activity going on there as things are moving around. There's stuff happening, right? Then you have dormant volcanoes, which may still have magma in their magma chamber, but they just are not erupting, or they may not have.
They've got bullets in the chamber, but no gunpowder.
Yeah, so
is that how guns work? I actually have no idea.
Not really. Maybe they've got gunpowder, but no bullet yet.
Okay. They've got gas in the tank, but no engine.
Sure. So, for whatever reason, right? I mean, it could just be a period of low activity. It could just be that the volcano has reached some sort of equilibrium with the actual mountain that has formed around it and the magma chamber.
So, but then it's still a volcano. Mm-hmm. It's a dormant volcano. It's not a mountain.
It's still a mountain. Volcanoes are still mountains.
Yes, okay, we went over this.
But not all mountains are volcanoes.
Okay, so then this is what I was getting at. So this picture here, we have like the previous hole and then the mountain peaks, and these mountains are volcanoes. So then are these all active then? Like
no. So here in the Jemez Mountains, these are actually extinct volcanoes. So
different than a dormant volcano?
Different than dormant. So extinct means that the magma in the magma chamber has like either fully solidified or emptied out completely, and there's no activity. It's just hard solidified rock at this point, right?
I see.
Yeah. So dormant means that it is still.
Okay, so it's a mountain with a previous history of volcanohood, also known as extinct mountain. Got it.
An extinct volcano, yeah. So it was formed by volcanic activity, but it is no longer volcanically active. Would be extinct.
Understood.
A dormant volcano was formed by volcanic activity. It's not currently active, but that doesn't mean it can't be active in the future. And then an active volcano is one that is active.
Now I'm fully on board.
Yeah. Cool. And this is just a picture of where Vesuvius is located. So this is the the city of Naples in Italy, major city in Italy, and it's like pretty much right there, And then Pompeii.
Oh, yeah, you can see it.
You sure can. Pompeii is just there to the southeast of Vesuvius. About 19,000 years ago, the eruption started to become much more explosive at Pompeii, leading to a series of explosive eruptions leading up to the most recent one, which occurred in 79 AD. So from about 3,800 years ago to about 217 BCE, which is like 2,200 years ago. So a period of like 1,600 years. The volcano entered a period of more frequent but less intense eruptions. So that meant that it was erupting a lot, but they weren't like causing major damage. They were small eruptions. They were localized. It might just be launching ash a few miles instead of hundreds of miles.
Yeah, just like little.
Yeah, just like relieving pressure.
Hiccups.
Yes, exactly.
Aww.
And the thing with eruptions is like, if you have a lot of frequent small eruptions, that means that the pressure can never build up to an extreme point in the mountain, right? So that means you're kind of just relieving the pressure.
Yeah, like you gotta like burp a jar so it doesn't explode.
Exactly.
A little bit.
Yeah, that tends to be a much safer volcano to live near. When you have like very infrequent but very large eruptions, that tends to be a more dangerous mountain to live near. Yeah. So the last of those eruptions, we're thinking as if we're in 79 CE right now. The last of those eruptions occurred in 217 BCE, and then the volcano went quiet for about 300 years. It's possible there were a few like very small minor eruptions during this period, but there's a lot of contemporary writing that suggests that the Romans living in the area of Vesuvius knew that Vesuvius was a volcano. They had seen, people had been to the summit. They saw the ash up there. They saw like scorch marks from the hot magma and stuff. Multiple accounts of ash and volcanic rock and high fertility slopes, much like is seen near Mount Etna on the island of Sicily. Yep.
So is Mount Vesuvius the Pompeii volcano, or is this a different volcano? Okay.
No, this is the Pompeii volcano.
Okay, Dave.
Yep. And then also, Romans in general would have been familiar with like volcanoes and volcanic eruptions because Mount Etna, which is the volcano on the island of Sicily, that thing erupts like all the time. So much so that this Chinese traveler in June of 1218 CE recorded an eruption of it when he happened to be passing through, which I think is really fun. And is also like something I kind of want to make an episode on, because there used to be like this whole genre of dude that would just go explore Earth and like travel around and record things. Like Marco Polo is like probably the most famous one in the West.
Yeah, like this isn't like a job anymore.
Right, yeah, you can't just like go wander about and like make a report to a king like 30 years later, like, hey, I'm back.
You can't just be an explorer. I'm gonna go explore.
Yeah.
I'll let you know what's out there. That's crazy.
So Marco Polo is probably the best known one in the West, but there's also this guy Ibn Battuta who traveled around a lot of Africa and then Europe and parts of Asia. And then Raban Bar Salma, who is this Chinese traveler who I just mentioned, who I did not know about before researching this episode. So that's another one to add to the list. Okay, so in the years leading up to the fatal eruption in 79 CE, a series of earthquakes struck the area surrounding the Gulf of Naples, including a large one in 62 CE, which caused widespread damage in Pompeii and surrounding cities. Some of that damage was not fully repaired by the time that the big eruption happened in 79 CE. And a few smaller quakes also hit between 62 and 79 CE and became considered relatively normal for the area. Like there was just seismic activity that was happening all the time, and they were just like, whatever. Ancient Romans didn't have any
what are you
concept
supposed
of,
to do?
Yeah. Ancient Romans they didn't have a concept of volcanism and volcanology, right?
What would you do now if you lived? I'd be like, okay, well, my lease, I already signed my lease, so like this is where I live.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's volcano insurance?
What's that?
Do you think there's volcano insurance?
Like earthquake insurance?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if you live like on a volcano, but I would imagine it's just covered in your homeowner's insurance, hopefully.
I was going to say, I feel like if you live near a volcano, they're not going to offer you volcano insurance. It's like how they don't want to give Floridians hurricane insurance.
Well, yeah, that has more to do with
I don't know how like
for-profit insurance than it does for like
insurance is in Italy, but disaster
no, I
insurance
imagine
here.
And these days we have a lot better monitoring in place, so like we have more warning if there's going to be a large eruption somewhere.
Yeah, you can at least kind of like evacuate people, but it's not going to save your house.
No, it won't. Yeah, there's only so much you can do with when multiple feet of ash get dropped on your house. Like roofs are not meant to withstand that generally, especially not back in 79 CE. Okay. In the 4 days leading up to the 79 CE eruption, a series of many small earthquakes were felt around Vesuvius, but they were not understood as a sign of trouble to come. Pliny the Younger even wrote that they were not particularly alarming because they are frequent in Campania, which is that kind of region.
That's fair. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, it's like, whatever. Another earthquake. Who gives a shit?
Rains every day. Goddamn.
Yeah. And so this leads me into what I want to do now, which is like read you the only surviving account of the eruption, which was 2 letters written by Pliny the Younger to the Roman historian Tacitus. I want to note that Pliny does not mention Pompeii or Herculaneum in his letters, probably because they were pretty well-known towns at the time, and he felt like he didn't need to mention them to his buddy Tacitus. And that contributed to the fact that they kind of got forgotten about historically until the 1700s, when they were just like rediscovered, and a bunch of like really interesting early archaeology was done on the sites, because people just didn't know that they were there.
I think I missed the first part. What did they forget?
They forgot about the existence of the cities of Herculaneum and Pompeii, which were the two like main biggest cities that got destroyed by the eruption.
Damn.
Yeah.
Ouch.
I know. And there were actually multiple cities destroyed in this eruption, but I'm just going to talk about, Herculaneum and Pompeii are the two of the most well-known ones.
I didn't even know it was more than just Pompeii.
Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I'm sure there were like countless little small villages.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just never really thought about it that deeply.
Yeah.
I also didn't know it was like near this bay where there's so much like towns along it.
Yeah, Naples.
I was kind of picturing it just being like, it's like the volcano was just in Pompeii and everything around it was Pompeii, not outside of all of these other cities.
Yeah, Pompeii's not even the closest one to it. So
no.
Herculaneum is much closer, and that one, very similar to Pompeii.
Gets it shit rocked.
It does. It gets it shit rocked. And Herculaneum's interesting because it's more of a beach resort kind of town for the Roman nobility. So there weren't that many people there at the time, at least compared to how many were in Pompeii. It was kind of like the skeleton crew, because I think they think it was the off season for.
So why is Pompeii like the known like name associated with this eruption then? Because there's so many cities and so many that are closer too.
Yeah, the reason Pompeii is the most known is because it was definitely like the biggest city in the area. It was like kind of the trade hub and industrial powerhouse of the region at the time.
I see. It was like the major city.
Yes, it was the major
versus
city
all
there.
the small cities. Okay.
Versus smaller towns. Okay, so I'm going to read you these two letters real quick because they're pretty short. At that time, my uncle, who is Pliny the Elder, by the way.
Who?
Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger are two like very famous Roman historians and just kind of Roman dudes from this time period.
Yes.
Yeah. You may have heard their names before. I don't know.
Oh, Nick, yes. Okay, that's why it sounded so familiar.
Yep.
Yes. Pliny the Elder. Okay.
They're both named Pliny, and they get referred to in later times as Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger. They just are very prolific writers, and a lot of their stuff survived to today.
So his son is writing to him, or who's writing to him?
His uncle, or his nephew, Pliny the Younger, is writing to this other Roman historian, Tacitus, about what he witnessed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pliny is writing to who?
Tacitus.
Okay. Following.
So at that time, my uncle was
philosopher.
Yeah, historian.
Yeah, why is he writing to?
Historian, as historical as you could be, and
he's a guy
2,000 years ago.
Yeah, so he's just a guy that wrote things down. Got it.
Yeah. So at that time, my uncle was at Misenum in command of the fleet. About 1 p.m, my mother pointed out a cloud with an odd size and appearance that had just formed. From that distance, it was not clear from which mountain the cloud was rising, although it was found afterwards to be Vesuvius. The cloud could best be described as more like an umbrella pine than any other tree. So he's describing the mushroom cloud that is forming over the volcano.
Damn, that'd be wild to see.
Mm-hmm. Because it rose up high in a kind of trunk and then divided into branches. I imagine that this was because it was thrust up by the initial blast until its power weakened and it was left unsupported and spread out sideways under its own weight. Sometimes it looked light-colored, sometimes it looked mottled and dirty with the earth and ash it had carried up. Like a true scholar, my uncle saw at once that it deserved closer study and ordered a boat to be prepared. He said that I could go with him, but I chose to continue my studies. Just as he was leaving the house, he handed a message from Rectina, the wife of Taxus, whose home was at the foot of the mountain and had no way of escaping by boat. She was terrified that the threatening danger and begged him to rescue her. He changed plan at once, and he had started in a spirit of scientific curiosity, he ended as a hero. He ordered the large galleys to be launched and set sail. He steered bravely straight for the danger zone that everyone else was leaving in fear and haste, but still kept on noting his observations. So his uncle just could not stop doing science on his way to go save some people from this volcano.
Okay.
Running and writing.
So Pliny the Younger is writing to his uncle.
No, he's writing to some dude.
And he's saying that his uncle is going towards Vesuvius.
Yep.
Because there's this big cloud.
Yeah, because there's a big cloud, and then someone asked him to go save their family, basically.
Okay, so why does he need to go there for them to leave? Do they not have transportation?
Yeah, so I think it was the only way out was by boat, and they couldn't get out for some reason.
Okay, that makes sense. I was like, walk.
Yeah. Yep.
Start walking before you die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
So uncles en route.
Yep. The ash already falling became hotter and thicker as the ships approached the coast, and it was soon superseded by pumice and blackened burnt stones shattered by the fire. Suddenly, the sea shallowed where the shore was obstructed and choked by debris from the mountain. He wondered whether to turn back, as the captain advised, but decided instead to go on. Fortune favors the brave, he said. Take me to Pomponius. Pomponius lived at Stabiae, across the Bay of Naples, which was... I know.
That's a big name to drop. Oh my god.
I know.
Pomponius.
Actually, I think it's Pomponianus is how you actually say it.
Pomponianus.
Pomponianus.
Corleanus.
Pomponius.
Pomponianus. Okay, what happened?
I love everyone telling him to hey, I think we should turn around, and him being like, nah, fortune favors the brave, and just let's keep going.
He dies. He definitely dies, doesn't he? Okay.
I mean, the guy was the only one that survived,
I guess.
Yeah. I think
my
there's
God.
he says here suddenly the sea shallowed, which I think is also there was some a tsunami associated with this event as well. So I think that is a description of what was going on there. Okay, where were we?
Water was being sucked out.
Yeah. Pomponianus lived at Stabiae across the Bay of Naples, which was not yet in danger but would be threatened if the eruption spread. Pomponianus had already put his belongings into a boat to escape as soon as the contrary onshore wind changed. This wind, of course, was fully in my uncle's favor and quickly brought his boat to Stabiae, but then wouldn't let him leave. My uncle calmed and encouraged his terrified friend and was cheerful, or at least pretended to be, which was just as brave. Meanwhile, tall, broad flames blazed from several places on Vesuvius and glared out through the darkness of the night. My uncle soon soothed the fears of his companions by saying that they were nothing more than the fires left by the terrified peasants, who were empty, abandoned houses that were blazing.
Okay, so wait. So he's traveling in the dark. The air is thick of dust. Thick. The town is saying, turn around. You can't stay here. And everything in front of them is on fire.
Well, it's worse than that.
And he's going...
So he went to go save this friend, right?
Yeah.
He gets there, and they're like, okay, unfortunately, we can't actually leave because the wind is blowing us back on shore. So now we're stuck here with you.
Oh, so he did get the friend in all of this.
So, well, he got to where the friend lived at Stabiae.
Yeah.
And then they were all stuck there then. Okay,
so Stabiae was the final location. He gets to final location now, but they're all stuck now.
Yeah, now they're all stuck there. And the eruption's getting worse. There's more and more stuff falling on them, more ash. It's getting harder to breathe. So he can't even
turn around anyway.
Because that was his ultimate goal. The boat can only go downwind because they hadn't invented upwind sailing yet.
I didn't know that was a thing we invented.
It was. Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
Weird physics, fluid dynamic stuff. Basically, the sails act like a wing instead of a parachute.
Oh, they go like the opposite way somehow.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
In a way that I don't understand.
They generate thrust instead of like just catching the wind. It's a whole.
That's beyond me.
Yeah, or they generate lift instead of just catching them. It's a thing.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right. Anyway, so they're stuck and everything's on fire and the air is dust.
Yep. They're seeing like fire getting belched out of the mountain and everything. Yeah, it's not a good situation to be in. Let's see. My uncle soothed the fears of his companions by saying, "Oh yeah, I read that." He went to bed and apparently fell asleep, for his loud, heavy breathing was heard by those passing his door. But eventually the courtyard outside began to fill with so much ash and pumice that, if he had stayed in his room, he would never have been able to get out. He was awakened and joined Pomponius and his servants who had sat up all night. They wondered whether to stay indoors or go out into the open, because the buildings were now swaying back and forth and shaking with more violent tremors. Outside, there was the danger from the falling pumice, although it was only light and porous. After weighing the risks, they chose the open country and tied pillows over their heads with cloths for protection. So they tied pillows to their head and run. And they're like, I'd rather get hit by a light rock than have an entire building fall on me.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, like, also, okay, so you can't sail the opposite direction. Staying put's obviously not gonna help. Like, you might as well try to walk on land away from it.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the geography looks like here.
True, it could be like really mountainous or something.
It does in fact look like there's this little mountain. Do you see this little mountain range here?
Yeah. I mean, it looks like there's a lot of mountains.
Yeah, it looks like that may have been the issue, was that it's kind of like an isolated enclave.
Damn, they're
there.
really like in a fucked situation.
Yeah.
Okay, but they're outside and they've got pillows on their heads.
Mm-hmm. It was daylight elsewhere by this time, but they were still enveloped in a darkness that was blacker and denser than any night, and they were forced to light their torches and lamps. My uncle went down to the shore to see if there was any chance of escape by sea, but the waves were still far too high. He lay down to rest on a sheet and called for drinks of cold water. Then suddenly, flames and a strong smell of sulfur, giving warning of yet more flames to come, forced the others to flee. He himself stood up with the support of 2 slaves, and then he suddenly collapsed and died, because, I imagine, he was suffocated when the dense fumes choked him. When light returned on the 3rd day after the last that I had seen him, his body was found intact and uninjured, still fully clothed and looking more like a man asleep than dead.
He choked to death. Oh my god!
Fortune did not favor the brave.
No, too hard.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, he was like relatively old at this time, so he probably had like some kind of asthmatic attack or wasn't in the greatest health to begin with, and all of the inhaling ash and dust and everything.
Too much dust.
Yeah, so like,
and literally choked.
The rest of the people were able to get out though, or like ran away on foot, but he wasn't able to. So they think that
he was also just kind of staying in one place, which I feel like wasn't helping.
No,
like he like laid down and he was probably asleep, deep breathing.
Yeah, it sounded like he was a snorer. Maybe he had like, what's the thing where you need like a CPAP machine?
Oh, like sleep apnea?
Sleep apnea. Maybe he had sleep apnea or something. Yeah. I mean, he was like a decorated, like he was in charge of the fleet. Like he probably drank and ate way more than he should have. This guy probably had gout. Like,
I thought you were gonna say like, well, he was a decorated fleet member. He was probably like a really athletic man, and you're like, no, he probably had alcoholism.
No, he was probably like fat and drunk.
That's
and
so much more accurate.
Yeah,
40 years past his prime.
Yeah. So
All right, well, he's dead.
So Pliny the Elder died. R.I.P. That was the first letter, and then here, the first letter is really interesting too because it's like the first like really somewhat scientific account of what a volcanic eruption looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that explosive eruptions like this are referred to as Plinian eruptions now because Pliny did such a good job of describing them. Yeah. So like there's a whole Wikipedia page for Plinian eruptions, and it's kind of like the classic explosive eruption where you get the big mushroom cloud and all of that good stuff. Okay. So in the second letter he says, "Meanwhile, my mother and I had stayed at Misenum. After my uncle left us, I studied, dined, and went to bed, but slept only fitfully. We had earth tremors for several days, which were not especially alarming because they happened so often in Campania. But that night they were so violent that everything felt as if it were being shaken and turned over. My mother came hurrying to my room, and we sat together in the forecourt facing the sea. By 6 o'clock, the dawn light was still only dim. The buildings around were already tottering, and we would have been in danger in our confined space if our house had fallen down. This made us decide to leave the town. We were followed by a panic-stricken crowd that chose to follow someone else's judgment rather than decide anything for themselves. We stopped once we were out of town, and then some extraordinary and alarming things happened. The carriages we had ordered began to lurch to and fro. Although the ground was flat, we could not keep them still even when their wheels were wedged with stones. Then we saw the sea sucked back, apparently by an earthquake, and many sea creatures were left stranded on the dry sand. From the other direction over the land, a dreadful black cloud was torn by gushing flames and great tongues of fire, like much magnified lightning. So yeah, he's describing like the main eruption that really does the big damage.
Okay, so
a whole bunch of earthquakes and the tsunami.
Oh, awesome! All at once. So it like spits dust for like a few days, and then there's a big earthquake, and then it has this big like eruption with like lightning and shit.
So this eruption that happened in 79 CE happens over the span of like 3 days. And there's kind of like an initial startup, and then it like peaks, and then it'll drop off at some point. And so this is like the peak that he's talking about right now. This is like the main explosive eruption part. This is when the majority of the ejecta gets launched out.
And what does this look like? This like big eruption?
That's kind of what the left image here is like based on Pliny's description, and the right is this kind of famous painting of the eruption of Vesuvius. Artist interpretation for sure, but and you can just see like the ash and stuff raining down, and all the people fleeing and hiding, and yeah.
All right. But what was this bit about the lightning? It's coming out of the volcano?
No, a lot of times in the cloud of ash and dust and debris, there can be lightning in the cloud.
Damn.
Yeah. Well, there's all the friction and rubbing and stuff that happens.
All those electrons.
Vertical movement. Yeah, it's the same process that gets you regular lightning. It just happens to be triggered by a volcanic eruption.
Okay, so they're getting hit with volcanic eruption, lightning, earthquake, tsunami, ash rain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Super fun. I mean, it's all, it's all one event.
Yeah, it's all one
event,
all
related, but yes, the symptoms include shit falling out of the sky, the ocean pulling up on land, like the earth literally shaking itself apart, all kinds of fun stuff.
God, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Good thing they had those pillows.
I know, right? Well, I don't know how much it helped. The clouds sank down soon afterwards and covered the sea, hiding Capri and Capo Misenum from sight. My mother begged me to leave her and escape as best I could, but I took her hand and made her hurry along with me. Ash was already falling by now, but not very thickly. Then I turned around and saw a thick black cloud advancing over the land behind us like a flood. This is really cool. This is referring to a pyroclastic flow, which happens a lot in volcanic eruptions. Pyroclastic flows are like super fast moving mixtures of ash, debris, dust, and volcanic gases. And what happens is they get like shot out of the volcano so quickly, and they start flowing down the slopes of the volcano and spreading out. And it's just like, it's basically like a flood of ash and volcanic gases and stuff. Super nasty, not something you want to be caught in.
Yeah, awesome.
And this is the first description that we have of anything like that.
Volcano loogie, perhaps.
What was that?
Volcano loogie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hate the word loogie. I just decided. That sounded so gross.
Let us leave the road while we still can, I said, or we will be knocked down and trampled by the crowd. We had hardly sat down to rest when the darkness spread over us. But it was not the darkness of a moonless or cloudy night. It was just as if the lamps had been put out. Or in a completely closed room, we could hear women shrieking, children crying, and men shouting. Some were calling for their parents, their children, or their wives, and trying to recognize them by their voices. Some people were so frightened of dying that they actually prayed for death. Many begged for the help of the gods, but even more imagined that there were no gods left and that the last eternal night had fallen on the world. There were also those who added to
religion played a component in this. like if this happened, like with the sequence of things that happen with like this eruption and the ash and the rocks and tsunami and shit, like you would think that like your
of
gods are
course.
coming for you.
Yeah, especially with how much the Greeks and Romans personified the natural world through their gods and stuff. Like, I was reading something about Vesuvius being, as a mountain, being dedicated to not Zeus. What's the Roman equivalent of Zeus?
Oh,
Jupiter.
it's not Jupiter. Oh,
yeah, Jupiter. So there was some relationship between Mount Vesuvius and Jupiter already existing at the time that this eruption happened. I didn't quite understand all of it. There's a lot of like cult worship and stuff that takes place in ancient Rome and Greece, where like you might have some kind of physical embodiment of a god, personified somehow. So I think there was some of that going on. There were also those who added to our real perils by inventing fictitious dangers. Some claimed that a part of Misenum had collapsed or that another part was on fire. It was untrue, but they could always find somebody to believe them. A glimmer of light returned, but we took this to be a warning of approaching fire rather than daylight. But the fire stayed some distance away. The darkness came back and ash began to fall again, this time in heavier showers. We had to get up from time to time to shake it off, or we would have been crushed and buried under its weight. I could boast that I never expressed any fear at this time, but I was only kept going by the consolation that the whole world was perishing with me. After a while, the darkness paled into smoke or cloud, and the real daylight returned, but the sun shone as thinly as during an eclipse. We were amazed by what we saw because everything had changed. What's that? Eclipse mentioned. Oh! I know. So clearly Pliny has seen an eclipse too, which is cool.
This man's seen it all.
Not too many people have seen both a total solar eclipse and an entire countryside destroyed by a volcano.
Very, very few people, yes.
Yeah. If any, currently living. We were amazed by what we saw because everything had changed and was buried deep in ash like snow. We went back to Misenum and spent an anxious night switching between hope and fear. Fear was uppermost because the earth tremors were still continuing and the hysterics still kept on making their alarming forecasts. So, as you can tell, kind of a crazy event that happened here. And as this map here shows, Pompeii, Atlantis, Stabiae, and Herculaneum were all pretty much destroyed by the eruption. This is kind of shows you where the main
danger zone.
Exactly.
Yeah, Pompeii is right in the middle of it. It's ash.
Yeah, they got shitted on.
They were perfectly downwind of the eruption when it happened, and not much you can do about it. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see too with the wind going that direction how they couldn't get out of the Gulf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how they couldn't leave Stabiae. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that brings us to the archaeology of especially Herculaneum and Pompeii, because fascinating site.
Archaeology time.
Herculaneum was more of a resort town, as I mentioned earlier, and had a much smaller population at the time of the eruption. Pompeii, on the other hand, was a working town and a relatively large trade hub in the area. Modern archaeology really gets its start at the sites of Herculaneum and Pompeii. Because they're not discovered until the 1700s, there's so much still there that is intact, and this is where people really learn to do excavations and are finding so many artifacts that it's almost overwhelming, and they just are okay, we need to be really methodical with how we dig this up. We're not grave robbing, we are doing archaeology here. There's a ton of intact frescoes, one of which is depicted here. Mosaics, lots of sex was depicted, which I will be getting into. Oh, here's some beautiful mosaic that survived. And here is some of the sex that we can see. I love this guy at the bottom left with just the absolutely massive ball sack.
Okay, yeah, I was concerned. I thought that was another head.
No, it's his balls. Look at this thing.
Big balls.
Let me get a look at this ball sack.
Oh, Kayla. I've got plenty to show you. You're going to love this episode.
Let me gander at this sack.
I want to show you this fresco, which survived intact in Herculaneum.
Insane. That's so
I know,
cool.
right? The colors, There's something really cool here too, where the little statues on either side that have the paintings above them, the statues are painted, which I'm going to get into a little bit more in a bit.
That's so cool.
Just like the color that's preserved is incredible. And then this is a mosaic as well that was found. I believe this is... I put notes here, didn't I? A mosaic of Neptune and Amphitrite, who was one of his
bitches.
Many consorts, probably, yeah. But I just love the detail in it. Like, look how much is going on here at the top and patterns and so good.
Did you already explain why it was so well preserved?
I did not yet. That's a very good point. I will be getting to that at some point. But yeah, the main thing is it got buried so quick and under so much ash and debris that there was no water was getting in here. There was no, like, the ash kind of fell on everything and in many ways, like, stabilized it. Sure, it killed a ton of people, but it preserved so much stuff so well, because apparently getting buried in ash is a really great way to, like, preserve paint and color and wood and all of these things that don't normally preserve and last for 2,000 years.
Well, I was going to say that kind of like how something could get leathered in sunlight, but that would require a lot of, like, the dehydrating effects of the sun and what comes with that, rather than, like, being pressed.
Yeah,
maybe it's the same idea, like a silica gel packet keeping stuff dry.
Basically, yeah, the hot ash sucked all the moisture out of things. It collapsed a lot of roofs, but once the roof had collapsed, it filled in the center and held all the walls up. So it's like basically a resin cast of the site, essentially. I mean, it's not resin, but, like, that was the effect that it had.
Not to get too gruesome, but would that also mean that, like, the bodies were really well preserved?
Yeah, so a lot of bodies were preserved.
Okay,
Mostly what happened was they got buried, like, they would die either from the pyroclastic flow, smoke inhalation, getting hit on the head by a rock, building collapsing on them, whatever. And then a lot of people were buried in the ash. The bodies did eventually decompose, leaving mostly just bones. But that ash was so stable that a lot of early archaeologists were able to pour plaster into the openings that were left into the negative space and make these really, really incredible plaster casts of people that died at Pompeii and Herculaneum and all these other places.
Those, like, in museums and stuff, but I didn't know whether or not their, like, skin or, like, any other, like, tissue would be preserved.
No, I don't think any tissue was really preserved.
Do you think that's probably because of, like, the heat?
It could have something to do with the heat. It could have something to do with the fact that people tended to get out if they could, and the only reason they couldn't was because they died from some other factor. And then the cause of their death may have contributed to them not preserving as well. I imagine also that there's a lot of internal bacteria that would have fed on their corpses for a while. I don't know the specifics of why we don't have any tissue remains other than bone from them, but...
Well, because they probably didn't get sucked as dry as, like,
Yeah, that's true.
Like
other organic material.
Like, wood is starting from a much drier baseline than a human body.
Right, yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Hell yeah, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Pour one out for Pompeii.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this whole fresco. So this was found in one of the... Where did I put stuff about? This was found in one of the suburban bathhouses in Herculaneum, and it depicts 7 different sexual acts being performed. It was in one of the changing rooms, actually, and this dude with the giant nutsack is so funny to me. But there's also a depiction of oral sex of a woman, which is great. Dude, given
bored too. Do you see her?
She's, like, not even into it. She's like, if you want.
I'll put my leg up.
I mean, her face isn't so well preserved, but like, yeah.
It's her
hard
body
to say.
language. Oh my
It
god!
is whatever this is. It's
Okay,
just
so for
some kind of
our
gruesome
audio
happening.
listeners, it's one person like in doggy getting hit from behind, and then the person hitting it from behind is getting hit from behind.
Yeah. It seems to be a male, possibly woman threesome. And the two dudes are fucking. Well, one guy's giving it to the other guy, and he's giving it to her. It's what it looks like.
You know, it was a vacation city. People
was,
went crazy. Spring break.
Yeah, hey, you know what? What happens in Herculaneum stays in Herculaneum.
It's like going to Destin.
It's like going to the White Lotus.
And it's so funny to me to like see this kind of stuff depicted, especially by ancient Romans who are like held up
So
these days
freaky.
by some people as like pinnacles of masculinity and stuff. Meanwhile, they're having gay sex all the time.
Romans are so freaky and
that was
so
a top
gay.
3 activity in ancient Rome, was like having sex with another man. Like the concept of sex and sexuality in Rome was so much different back then than it is these days.
They were just trying to be sucking and fucking.
Mm-hmm, they were.
What else are you going to do?
There are
I've
also,
seen this before.
There are lots and lots of depictions of gigantic phalluses, believed to be a fertility symbol, because you see it in all kinds of places, not just somewhere like a bathhouse or a brothel, but all over the place.
Follow our Instagram if you want to see the phallic pictures.
Yeah, come take a peek at our Instagram. This is going to be a good one. Like we said earlier, Vesuvius not the only thing erupting in these cities.
Oh my!
This right here is actually a loaf of bread. This is a preserved loaf of bread with, and you can see there's a baker's stamp in it that designates, you know, which bakery produced the loaf. So like if something is wrong with it, if it's like rotten or whatever, or they replaced half the flour with sawdust, you can track down the baker and beat him up about it.
Guys, I think they left this one in the oven for a little bit too long.
Yeah, I think this one might be a little overdone.
It came out dry.
Yeah. So this was actually found in the remains of an oven in Pompeii, I believe.
Damn, someone just trying to bake bread that day.
They didn't even get to finish their bread.
Yeah, they were like actively baking this loaf when, you know,
they
all
probably
of a sudden,
were having such a good morning.
all hell broke loose.
They were
got
ready.
to pull this This guy had been raining ash for like a full day, and he was like, well, bread's not gonna bake itself.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting you mentioned that, because these public bakeries that you had in ancient Rome were a really big part of society. They were subsidized by the Roman government. And so like every person in Rome was allotted a certain amount of bread each day or something like that. And so there was a whole, you know, bureaucracy surrounding making sure that everyone got bread every day. Yeah, it was a huge staple for the Roman diet.
Damn, it is raining ash and dust, and people are like, better still get my bread today.
Yeah.
The government said I did.
Yeah. There's also a ton of graffiti that is preserved. Like over 11,000 samples of graffiti in Pompeii alone. And so I want to talk a little bit about
what's graffiti and what's not.
Well, so I want to talk a little bit about the word graffiti, because it's an Italian word that literally just means like writing on the wall. It doesn't really have the like vandalism connotation that we have in English these days.
Like paid for by the company or not writing on wall.
Yeah, it's just kind of like any writing on the wall.
Okay. Sanctioned or unsanctioned.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And some of it is sanctioned, some of it is unsanctioned. There are like advertisements that people would write on the walls, like, oh, seeking, you know, an intern for whatever.
Seeking third.
Yeah, right. Looking for the middle guy in our threesome.
Looking for someone that can take and receive.
Mm-hmm. Tight hole, big dick kind of guy.
Damn, think about trying to get 3 people in a rhythm.
Well, I wonder if the 2 on the ends are stationary and then the middle guy is just kind of going back and forth.
No, I feel like they're all moving in sync and there's a metronome keeping them in time.
Yeah, I was
Maybe.
thinking about like how like the momentum of particles is, and how like they push
she
each other.
throws it back
Newton's
and he
cradle.
throws it back.
And then like there's like the tethering factors, which is like holding on, and it's like a wave.
Oh man.
This is why they needed photos. They needed help.
Yeah, the photos just kind of make it look like the two people were moving in sync.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
So I want to read you.
Expert.
I do want to read you some of the more vulgar.
And I do want to hear some of the more
really
vulgar
funny.
graffiti.
But like some of it was just like bakery. Sometimes people would put like common sayings, advertisements, that kind of things on the wall. Some of it was more like, in wine there is truth, which was found on multiple taverns and drinking establishments. There is cave canem, which means beware of the dog, which I love. There's one graffiti which read, "Weep, you girls, my penis has given you up. Now it penetrates men's behinds. Goodbye, wondrous femininity."
Oh my god! Oh my god! Ancient come out moment.
Yep.
My penis has given you up.
Mm-hmm.
My penis has
a male roommate.
Goodbye, wondrous femininity. Then we have Samius to Cornelius. Go hang yourself.
Oh my god!
Writing the ancient kill yourself on the wall is just crazy work.
Oh my god.
And then Theophilus. Don't perform oral sex on girls against the city wall like a dog. Which
he said, get a room. Get a room, you hoes.
Like, come on, man. This is like the third time this week I've seen you eating someone out against the wall.
That is crazy work.
Mm-hmm.
Diabolical.
I was like, just not against the wall.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, gotta
like
get
at
support
least
somewhere.
The crowd.
Well, I'm assuming she was like standing. I don't know.
No, Nick, that much I got.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, she was levitating.
Mm-hmm.
Rome was
she was
crazy.
she was doing a handstand against the wall.
They also found a bunch of statues. This is a depiction of. I wrote it down. Let's see. Pan fucking a she-goat. Is the
I did not get the fuck part until after you said it.
Yeah,
No,
if you look closely.
Yeah.
I
hate that. I hate this one.
I also hate this one. I felt I had to include it because the sculpture work is actually really well done, but
yeah,
it's bestiality.
Well, is it? Because he's like part goat. He's like he's Pan. He's the forest god.
Regardless, it's art. And it's like a very well made, like marble, I'm assuming, statue or some kind of hard stone. But that is wild.
It is wild.
I can't get over the fact that their balls are kissing.
I know, like they both. Is that balls or tails?
Tail? I think that's a tail. I think that's her tail and his balls. Because the goat is female. And I'm wondering, like, would they? Because if he's half goat, would their kids be 3/4 goat? I don't know.
I think the goat is recessive. And we have to draw our Punnett square,
Yeah.
I think she's got double goat, GG, and he's got big G, little g.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So there's a 1/4 chance for... Yeah, sorry.
No chance at full human.
Right. 50% chance at 3/4 goat, 50% chance at half goat.
Yeah.
But no full human.
No full human.
Interesting.
And that's actually scientific fact. So yeah, you can quote me on that one.
So I want to talk a little bit about a lot of the statues that were found here and what was depicted in this fresco, which is just absolutely gorgeous. There's a lot of statues with paint on them because the Romans and the Greeks painted all of their statues. And I want to talk about that because I've seen some modern reproductions that are just absolutely atrocious, like this one on the right. I think looks like, no offense to the artist that did it, it looks like shit.
No offense to the digital creator. You did a terrible job.
And I think the reason for that, there's a lot of reasons for that, but the reason that the ancient Mediterranean people painted their statues is because they considered their statues to be physical manifestations of whatever god that they were meant to depict, or whatever person they were meant to depict. And they were like actual vessels for those beings. So they did not consider statues to be art. They considered them to be like the physical manifestation of whatever divine being was being depicted. And that's why they would use a lot of paint. They would make them look very lifelike. They would have a lot of shading. This reconstruction on the left is way better done. I mean, it looks a lot more lifelike.
This other one looks really good.
Yeah, and it's because they actually used shading and took some artistic, leeway to make it look better. Whereas the one on the right does something that I think a lot of scientists do, where they're hesitant to take creative liberties that aren't 100% confirmed by the science that's done.
Yeah, like they could maybe say for sure there was yellow paint involved, but not for sure it was shaded in this realistic way. And they don't want to like make stuff up. But also making up that it's a flat color is also making it up. Yeah,
but so that's not correct either. Like we know for a fact, I mean, we're pretty darn sure that it was not just like a flat color. And I think it does disservice to the statue itself to not let an actual artist go ham on it and, recreate it in the way that they think would make sense, because like 2,000 years ago, some artist would have been doing the same thing, right? Like there was no...
Well, and I feel like this is going to tie into maybe why you brought this up, is because in the fresco, we see the painted statues. So we do kind of have an idea of how they would have wanted to paint them, like how they were intended to look.
Yes. They were painted to be very lifelike. And
I'll try to scroll through all the sex to get to...
I know, right? I gotta scroll through the sex to get back there.
Let me fast forward past...
Don't look at that.
Don't look at that. Don't look at the big balls on my screen.
The giant nutsack and the massive penis. Yeah, I don't think this episode's getting monetized on YouTube. I don't know if we were even there in the first place.
It's okay. None of our episodes are getting monetized.
So it doesn't matter.
Maybe if we get 12 followers, guys.
Yep. And
maybe once we hit our big 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like the way that we can... What's that?
What?
If like people try to restore it now, wouldn't it potentially like hurt the integrity of the marble or like of the sculpture?
So they never repaint the original statue. If they're gonna do it, they usually will do like either a plaster cast, or like a 3D reconstruction of it that's based off scans. So they're never painting the original statue when they're doing this stuff. But even so, like, because like you don't want to alter the artifact because you don't know what you could potentially be losing if you were doing that, right? So bad practice to repaint a statue that you find. Better practice is to look at and see if you can find any remnants of paint, which have been found on tons and tons of statues. A lot of that was actually bleached off during the Renaissance and like later years, because most of the surviving statues in the Renaissance were mostly pure marble, just clean marble. So Renaissance Europeans just assumed that was how the statues were supposed to look. And that spawned a whole rich tradition of Renaissance artists working purely in the stone. So like, the David statue, which was carved by Michelangelo, that was never intended to be painted. That's partially why the carving is so detailed, and he really spent a lot of time on getting the shading right in the marble, because he knew he wasn't going to paint it, or he didn't even have the idea of painting it, so he spent a lot more time on that. Whereas sometimes with some of the Roman ones, they're not quite as detailed in the shading and everything, because they knew they were going to get painted afterward. So just that's my little rant about, I think that we should let artists use give them some amount of creative leeway to reconstruct.
Yeah, at least in these like artists render. I mean, they're all just artists, like digital renders anyway.
Yeah,
so...
but I think that we should like give them the leeway to make them look good rather than being perfectly...
Well, I'm just saying, like, why not take a swing by telling an artist, like, do whatever you want, and if you hate it, like, okay, I'm gonna find a different artist, I guess.
Yeah, like, we know there was some yellow here, and some amount of this color here, and some amount of whatever, but, like, have some fun with it. Because
Make it
if you
look
just
good.
make it flat colors, it looks so bad. And I hate...
Yeah, they look like it's made out of Play-Doh.
Yeah, it looks like a 2-year-old did it, and you're like, there's no way the Romans would have thought this looked good. Like, come on. And I think that does a disservice to the artifact, you know? I also think it gives... I mean, this is not, like, the reason that we shouldn't do it, but, like, it gives, like, the, like, weird white supremacist people who are like, no, statues were always white. That is the whole point. And, like...
I've never heard that before.
There's
That's
a whole...
insane.
Oh, my God.
Jesus.
There's a whole, like...
White.
That is insane.
There's this, like...
Really like a white supremacy thing, or is it just like they just don't like never mind. I was gonna say, or they just don't like color, but
No, there's like a...
One and the same.
There's this, like, subsect of, like, modern fascists that hate modern culture and really, like... They think that they idolize, like, Rome and stuff, but then they don't want to admit any of the gay shit or, like, the fact that they painted their statues and stuff.
They're trying to, like, whitewash Roman history, basically.
It's basically like what the Italian fascists did in the 40s and stuff. Like, their conceptualization of ancient Rome, which is, like, totally ahistorical, but, you know. Yeah. There's also, like, a lot of lion iconography and lion statues around, which I think is cool because Romans would have been a lot more familiar with lions back then than you might think.
Oh my god, I didn't know this.
This was the original lion distribution.
God.
Yeah. So none in Italy, but you know, Rome used to import a lot of lions for, like, Colosseum battles and shit like that, and
that's where they were getting all the lions.
They would not be coming from sub-Saharan Africa. They would be coming from, like...
Well, I wonder why they're extinct. Rome.
Yeah, they would have had a hand in that. You know, that. And then one of the coolest things is that we have a bunch of preserved wood from 2,000 years ago, which is super rare, especially in a place like this. Like, we usually don't get wooden artifacts surviving this long. And so that, I think, has contributed a little bit to people assuming that ancient cultures built a lot more grand, giant stone monuments because those are the things that have survived. Like, there's some survivorship bias there because stone doesn't really rot, break down.
It's set in stone.
It's heavy. It's a big rock. It just kind of sits there usually. Like, that's why the pyramids have lasted so long. Is it turns out a giant pile of rocks is pretty damn stable.
Yeah.
And so we get these beautiful. So these are what are these called? Let's go back. These are larariums, which are small shrines to your household gods, and those are bottom right and bottom left here. The one with the little stone corinths at the top of the columns are really cool because they have red paint on them still, which means that, like, a lot of Roman buildings and stuff were probably painted, like, along with the statues. Like, you know, you think of, like, or Greco-Roman, I should say. You think of, like, the Parthenon in Athens and how that's, like, a pure white marble thing. Wrong. It was probably painted on the outside. It was probably super colored and decorated, and it probably had
people when they have a historical misconception around Nick.
Yeah. And then we also have in the top right there is a crib that was found in a room. There were, like, 5 people found in the room. One of them was a small child and presumably its family, and, you know, their remains were found alongside this, like, perfectly preserved wooden crib. And then this is a ceiling tile, and the reconstruction of it is there on the right. But, like, look how much paint is preserved on there. Like, there's reds, there's greens, there's some blues, there's white. I mean, it's like so much incredible detail was preserved because the town got completely buried in ash and pumice and everything.
Yeah, it just like it was, like, lost in the back of a barn for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right?
It since for, like, thousands of years.
Yeah, I mean, this looks like it could be 70 years old, not over, you know, almost 2,000, which is insane to think about.
Yeah. This looks like most abandoned barns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that is pretty much all I have for you guys. It's a super cool place. Definitely go visit if you can. They've got some great museums in the area.
Yeah, if I get a chance to go to Italy,
Yeah.
I'll go.
And it's so cool to like walk around Pompeii and like be in the remains of this city that are like there's nobody there anymore except for like people visiting.
You
But
didn't
can
include
just-
any pics of you there.
No, I didn't have any. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'll have to
so
ask my mom
sad.
for some. You know?
Yeah, see if you can find some, I'll put them on the Instagram.
Yeah. But I mean it's just so cool to like walk around this place and like see, I mean you can tell like it was so lived in and like it's so perfectly preserved that it's not hard to imagine yourself walking around there 2,000 years ago, going down to the bakery, picking up some bread, writing go hang yourself on the wall and giving someone going down on someone against the wall.
The good old
Yeah.
days.
It is funny seeing how like the more things change, the more things stay the same.
Mhm.
Like people are just gonna people.
Yeah.
We've always
Society has changed.
kind of been the same.
Yep. Technology has changed, but people really have not changed in the last even 15,000 years. You know, we've
Still
since
gotta
the
wake up and make your
agricultural
bread.
revolution.
Still gotta eat a girl out against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Still gotta find your third.
Still gotta do graffiti.
Let's go back and look at those because
Oh my god!
there's
I'm not done.
there's more on this too. Like, I mean, I just pulled out my favorites, which were the big balls, the 370 oral sex, but like the one on
I
the
just
far
pulled
right
out
here,
my favorites.
the one on the right here has like a woman with. I saw it referenced as a ferret. She's holding a ferret or something like that, which I think is odd. Like she's okay. So I'll describe this for the listeners. It's a woman in cowgirl holding a ferret. Don't know why.
I hate it.
I don't know what the context of that is. I'm not sure anyone really knows what the context of that is, but yeah, that's what she's doing.
This one, like right next to it, looks like this girl's like fisting someone laying down.
Yeah, that one's hard to tell. Let me see if I can pull up.
Oh my god.
Starts with just one guy.
Yeah,
One
really
big
tells the
ball.
story.
Yeah,
Oh my god, is he like reading something?
it sure looks like it.
What if it's like a picture inside of a picture where he's holding the like rest of the book that has all the positions in it?
He's holding like this fresco.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
What are you
wait.
looking for, Nick? Oh.
Let's see. I think this has the full. Yeah, here we go. Fellatio. It looks like this guy's getting head here. This is a man giving head to a woman. This is a lesbian sex scene. There we go. Hell yeah.
Damn, I wish you could see it better.
I know. It's kind of censored by time, unfortunately.
What is it? Oh, lesbian. Okay, I read the caption.
Yep,
Yeah,
this
that's-
is
that's
sex
the only
between a
reason we
female
know.
and two males.
I like that they're kind of deciding. They're kind of
this
making a lot of
This one's
swings
a
here.
foursome, yeah.
Four?
So we've got two
Yeah,
men
read
and
the
two women
description.
Been
involved.
bad.
Cunnilingus, fellatio, and anal sex between two females and two males.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it
I wish you
looks
could see
like-
it better.
I think the two men are on the left, and I think the two women are on the right. So there's one dude giving
Where's
back
the-
shots to another dude who is
I see it
receiving
now.
oral
Wait.
sex, and that woman
Yeah.
who is giving him oral sex is also receiving oral sex from the
fourth
person.
I
woman.
see, I
Yes.
see.
Yes, I can see the image now.
A nude male with a large scrotum holding a scroll, just like me.
What do you like to imagine he's reading, Nick?
Yeah, I wonder if it's like Roman smut, you know?
That's what Abby and I were
Do
talking
you think
about.
he's like looking at like a drawing of like a
I guess we'll never know. Cut out. Oh my god.
hello? Oh,
You
I'm back.
You cut out. You cut out.
Oh no.
Are you back, Nick?
I think so. I am now.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing you're
Can you
cutting
hear me?
out after you finish. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay.
What did you think he
Well,
was looking at?
Man, I'm glad we
The
finished
world
the
doesn't want you
episode.
to know, Kayla.
I was gonna say
Okay.
I hope it's Roman smut.
Ugh, that much we knew. Okay.
Mhm.
Anyway, follow the Instagram.
Yep.
Send us an email.
Mm-hmm.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Tell your friends and family.
Yeah, that's a
Re-listen
big
to
one,
all-
too.
Re-listen to all the episodes. And I think that covers it.
Yeah. And then
right.
don't forget to engage in cunnilingus, fellatio, and anal sex between two women and two men.
This podcast supports cunnilingus. Let the music play.
This podcast counts as socializing. This podcast counts as socializing.